The rain was pounding against the window like it had a grudge, each drop echoing the ache in my chest as I stood there in the empty living room, holding that faded photograph in my trembling hands. It was him, my Henry, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. His arm wrapped around a woman I didn't know, with 2 children at their feet, laughing like they were the happiest family in the world. My husband had been gone for 3 months, taken by that sudden heart attack that left me reeling. And now this, a secret life, tucked away in a locked drawer I'd finally mustered the courage to open. I felt the world tilt, my knees buckling as I sank onto the worn sofa, the one we'd bought together 30 years ago. How could the man I loved, the one who kissed me goodnight every evening without fail, have hidden something like this? My breath came in shallow gasps, the scent of his old cologne still lingering on the cushions, mocking me. It started innocently enough, or so I thought. The funeral had been a blur, friends and family gathering in our modest home in suburban Atlanta, murmuring condolences while I nodded through the fog of grief. Henry was 68 when he passed, a quiet accountant who'd spent his days crunching numbers and his evenings tinkering in the garage. We'd been married for 42 years, raised 2 wonderful children, Emily and Jack, who were now grown with families of their own. I was Evelyn, 65, a retired schoolteacher who'd always prided myself on seeing the good in people, on building a life rooted in trust and simple joys. But that day, sorting through his things, I found the key to his desk drawer hidden in the back of his sock drawer, taped under a pile of mismatched pairs. Why hide a key? My heart had skipped a beat, but I told myself it was nothing, maybe old tax documents or forgotten mementos. Inside, amid stacks of yellowed papers, was an envelope marked for emergencies only. My fingers hesitated over the seal, the paper crisp and unyielding, as if it knew the weight it carried. When I tore it open, letters spilled out, dozens of them, addressed to a Maria in Charleston, South Carolina. The handwriting was Henry's, that neat cursive I'd seen on countless birthday cards. "My dearest Maria," one began, "the days apart are endless, but knowing you're there with our little ones keeps me going. Our little ones." I dropped the letter, my vision blurring with hot tears. There were photos too. Henry at a beach picnic, holding a toddler on his shoulders. Another of him pushing a swing with a girl who looked about 10, her eyes the same shade of hazel as his. And bank statements, transfers to an account in Charleston, modest but consistent, labeled family support. The room spun, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall suddenly deafening, each second a hammer to my fracturing heart. I sat there for what felt like hours, the storm outside raging on, mirroring the turmoil inside me. How long had this been going on? Had our life together been a lie? Emily had called earlier that day, checking in as she always did, her voice warm over the phone. "Mom, you sound tired. Come visit us soon." But how could I tell her? How could I shatter the memory of her father? I clutched the photo tighter, studying the woman's face, soft features, dark hair pulled back, a gentle smile that didn't look cruel or conniving. Who was she? And those children, they had his chin, his easy grin. A wave of nausea hit me, mixed with an inexplicable pull, like a thread tugging at my soul. I wasn't just angry, I was lost, adrift in a sea of questions. That night, as lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the empty side of the bed where Henry used to sleep, I made a decision. I couldn't bury this like he had. I needed answers, even if they broke me further. Before all this, life with Henry was as steady as the sunrise. We'd met in college, back in the late 70s, when bell-bottoms were in fashion and disco ruled the radio. He was studying finance, I was in education. And our first date was a picnic by the campus lake. Sandwiches he'd packed himself, a bit soggy but made with care. "Evelyn," he'd said, his voice soft and earnest, "you're the kind of woman who makes a man want to build something real." We married young, 23 and full of dreams, settling in Atlanta where he got a job at a small firm and I started teaching 3rd grade. Our home was a cozy 2-story on Maple Street, with a front porch swing where we'd sit on summer evenings, sipping iced tea and watching fireflies dance. Emily came first, a bundle of energy with Henry's curiosity and my stubborn streak. She loved helping in the kitchen, her small hands kneading dough for biscuits, the flour dusting her nose like snow. "Mama, why does Daddy work so much?" she'd ask, and I'd smooth her hair, saying, "To take care of us, sweetheart." Then Jack arrived 3 years later, quieter, always with his nose in a book, just like his father. Family dinners were sacred, no TV, just us around the oak table. Henry had refinished himself, the wood smooth under my fingers as we passed plates of pot roast or fried chicken. The smell of garlic and onions would fill the air, mingling with laughter as the kids shared their day. Henry was the steady one, never raising his voice, always with a gentle word. "Life's too short for anger, Eve," he'd say, his hand covering mine, warm and reassuring. Weekends were for simple pleasures. Drives to the nearby lake, where Henry would bait the hooks and teach the kids to fish, the water lapping softly against the dock. Or movie nights in the living room, popcorn popping in the microwave, its buttery scent wafting through the house as we snuggled under blankets. He traveled for work, sometimes conferences, he'd say, or client meetings out of state. "Just a few days, love," he'd murmur, kissing my forehead before leaving, his suitcase packed neatly by the door. I never questioned it. Trust was the foundation of us. As the kids grew, Emily pursued nursing, marrying her high school sweetheart, Tom, and giving us 2 grandkids. Jack became an engineer, settling nearby with his wife, Sarah. Life felt full, complete like a well-tended garden, blooming year after year. But looking back, there were tiny cracks I ignored. Henry would sometimes stare off into space during dinner, his fork hovering midair, a distant look in his eyes. "Penny, for your thoughts." I'd tease, and he'd smile, shaking it off. "Just work stuff, Evie." His phone would buzz late at night, and he'd step outside to take the call, the screen's glow casting shadows on his face through the window. "Client emergency," he'd explain, slipping back into bed, his body tense against mine. I chalked it up to stress, to the demands of his job. After all, he was always there for us: birthdays, anniversaries, school plays. He built Emily's treehouse with his own hands, the hammer's rhythmic thud echoing through the yard as sawdust floated in the air. He read bedtime stories to Jack, his voice low and soothing, mimicking characters until giggles filled the room. How could a man so devoted have room for secrets? As retirement approached, we talked about traveling, maybe a cruise to Alaska, or visiting national parks. "We've earned it," he'd say, his eyes twinkling over morning coffee, the steam rising like a promise. The kitchen smelled of fresh brew and toast, a ritual we'd shared for decades. But then came the heart attack, sudden and merciless. He collapsed in the garage one evening, tools scattered around him like fallen soldiers. The paramedics' sirens wailed through the neighborhood, a sound that still haunts my dreams. At the hospital, the doctor's words were a blur. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson. We did everything we could." The kids rallied around me, Emily holding my hand as tears streamed down her face, Jack standing stoic but shattered. We buried him under the old oak in the cemetery, the earth damp and cool as I tossed a handful of dirt onto the coffin. In the weeks that followed, the house felt hollow, echoes in every room. I'd wake to the ghost of his presence, the indent on his pillow, the half-read book on his nightstand. Sorting his things was my way of coping, a slow unraveling of our shared life, until that drawer, that envelope, turned everything upside down. The next morning the rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy and damp, the kind that clings to your skin and makes every breath feel weighted. I hadn't slept. The photograph lay on the kitchen table where I'd left it, next to a cold cup of tea I'd forgotten to drink. Sunlight slanted through the blinds in thin gold bars, catching dust motes that drifted like tiny ghosts. I stared at the faces again. Maria, the girl, the boy, and felt something shift inside me. Not just pain, curiosity, a strange, almost shameful need to know who they were. What kind of life Henry had built in the shadows of ours. I didn't tell the children, not yet. Emily would have driven straight over, arms open, ready to fix what couldn't be fixed. Jack would have gone quiet, the way he does when the world disappoints him. Then started asking practical questions. Accounts, lawyers, timelines. I wasn't ready for their grief on top of mine. So I carried it alone, the way I'd carried so many small burdens over the years. Henry's late nights, his silences, the way he sometimes flinched when I asked about his trips. I told myself this was different. This was betrayal dressed up as another life. I started small, practical, like Henry would have done. The bank statements had an address printed at the top of each transfer confirmation. A P.O. box in Charleston. No street name, no apartment number, just a box number and a zip code. I opened my laptop, the fan humming softly, and typed Charleston, South Carolina into the search bar, then added the name Maria and hesitated before adding Thompson. Nothing useful came up. Too common, too vague. I tried Maria plus Henry Thompson next. A few random hits, LinkedIn profiles, old yearbook mentions, but nothing that matched. Then I noticed something on one of the older statements, a handwritten note in Henry's script on the margin of a deposit slip. Just 3 words, M. Rivera. School fees, Rivera, not Thompson. My heart gave a hard, painful thud. I leaned closer to the screen, the blue light stinging my eyes. Maria Rivera. I typed the name with the Charleston zip code. A Facebook profile appeared almost immediately public. No privacy settings. The profile picture was the same woman from the photograph. Dark hair now streaked with silver, still soft around the face, smiling in front of a brick school building. The banner photo showed 2 teenagers, 1 boy, 1 girl, arms around each other at what looked like a high school graduation. The caption read, "Proud Mama Moment. Class of 2023. We made it." I scrolled slowly. The way you walk through a house that isn't yours. Birthday posts. Holiday cards. A photo from last Christmas. Maria in a red sweater. The kids no longer little, laughing beside a tree decorated with mismatched ornaments. There was no man in any of the recent pictures. Just the 3 of them. Always the 3 of them. I sat back, chair creaking under me. The kitchen clock ticked louder than it ever had before. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. They looked happy. Not rich, not glamorous. Just ordinary. A small house with peeling blue paint on the porch. Bikes leaning against the railing. Flower pots with geraniums that needed watering. It was the kind of life I recognized. The kind I had lived. I didn't cry then. The tears had dried up somewhere in the night. Instead, I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything soft inside me and left only bone. I closed the laptop, stood up on legs that didn't feel entirely mine, and walked to the sink. I ran cold water over my wrists until they ached, trying to shock my body back into the present. Then, I did the only thing that made sense. I booked a flight. Charleston in late spring smelled of salt and blooming jasmine. I rented a compact car at the airport, the kind Henry always chose because they were sensible on gas. The GPS directed me through quiet streets lined with live oaks draped in Spanish moss, past pastel houses with wide porches and rocking chairs. My hands shook on the wheel every time I stopped at a light. I told myself I was just going to look, just to see. I wouldn't speak to them. I wouldn't ruin whatever peace they had. The house was smaller than it looked in the photos. White siding, green shutters, a concrete walkway cracked in places but swept clean. A basketball hoop bolted above the garage door, net frayed from use. I parked across the street under the shade of an enormous magnolia, engine off, windows cracked. The air was thick with humidity and the faint scent of cut grass. I waited. Around 4:30, the school bus rumbled down the block and stopped 2 houses away. The boy toddler, now lanky, wearing a hoodie and earbuds, stepped off first. Then the girl, hair in a high ponytail, carrying a backpack that looked too heavy for her frame. They walked together, shoulders brushing, talking about something that made the boy throw his head back and laugh. I watched the way he moved long strides, hands in pockets, the same slight forward tilt Henry had when he was thinking. My throat closed. Then the front door opened. Maria stepped out onto the porch in jeans and a faded green t-shirt, dish towel over her shoulder. She waved at them, called something I couldn't hear. The kids broke into a run, dropping their bags at the bottom of the steps. She hugged them both at once, arms wide, laughing as the boy tried to wriggle free and the girl buried her face in her mother's shoulder. It was such an ordinary moment, so painfully tender. I pressed my palm to my chest as if I could hold my heart together. I stayed until the porch light came on and the windows glowed gold, until I saw Maria glance toward the street, frowning slightly, like she sensed someone watching. Then I started the car and drove away, tears finally coming in silent, hot streams down my cheeks. I didn't know what I felt most: anger at Henry, pity for her, jealousy of the life they'd had, or something softer, something I couldn't name yet. That night in the hotel room, lying on stiff sheets that smelled faintly of bleach, I opened my phone and looked at the photo again. I zoomed in on the children's faces. They were beautiful. They were his. And somehow, impossibly, part of me wanted them to be mine too. Back in Atlanta, the house felt different when I returned, like it had been holding its breath the whole time I was gone. The air inside was still, thick with the scent of lemon polish I'd used the week before, trying to scrub away grief. I dropped my suitcase in the foyer and stood there, listening to the refrigerator hum. No footsteps, no voice calling my name from the kitchen. Just silence and the faint echo of what used to be. I didn't unpack right away. Instead, I went straight to Henry's desk again, pulled out every letter, every photo, every bank record, and spread them across the dining table like evidence in a trial I wasn't sure I wanted to win. There were more than I'd first realized. Birth certificates for Sofia Rivera, born 2008, and Mateo Rivera, born 2011. Henry's name wasn't on them. The father was listed as unknown, but the dates lined up too neatly with those weekend conferences in South Carolina he used to take. The ones he always came back from quieter, a little more distant, carrying the faint smell of sea air on his coat. I sat with all of it for hours. Coffee grew cold in the mug beside me. The afternoon light moved across the table, turning the edges of the papers golden, then gray. At some point I started reading the letters again, not skimming this time, really reading. They weren't love letters, not the passionate kind you imagine in affairs. They were careful, practical. The check for Sophia's braces arrived, thank you. She's doing better in math this semester. Mateo asked about you again. I told him you're a good man who works hard for us. We miss you, but we understand. Take care of Evelyn. My name appeared in almost every letter. He'd written about me. Not as the betrayed wife, but as someone he loved and protected. Evelyn had a rough week with the kids' school play. She's tired, but she never complains. She made your favorite peach cobbler last night. I ate 2 pieces and thought of you. The words stung worse than any accusation could have. He hadn't erased me. He'd kept me in the center of his secret world, like a photograph tucked inside a wallet. I cried, then ugly wrenching sobs that left my throat raw. Not just for the betrayal, but for the loneliness he must have carried. For the man who tried to hold 2 lives together and failed at both. Days blurred. I called in sick to my part-time library job, something I'd never done in 20 years. Emily texted, "Mom, everything okay? You're not answering?" I typed back a lie about a stomach bug and turned off my phone. I wasn't ready to explain, not when I didn't even understand it myself. Then, one evening, as the sky turned the bruised purple of dusk, I found the last envelope. It was different, thicker, sealed with tape, addressed to me in Henry's handwriting. For Evelyn to be opened after I'm gone. My fingers shook so badly, I almost dropped it. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper and a USB drive. The letter was short. "Eve, if you're reading this, I didn't have the courage to tell you while I was alive. I'm sorry. That word isn't big enough, but it's all I have. Maria was my first love. We were young, reckless. When she got pregnant with Sofia, I panicked. I thought I'd ruined everything, my future, hers, ours. I left Charleston and came back to Atlanta to marry you, the woman who made me believe in steady ground. I thought I could bury the past. I was wrong. When Mateo came along, I couldn't walk away again. I told myself I was doing the right thing, supporting them without destroying what we had. I was a coward. I wanted both worlds and thought I could keep them separate. I never stopped loving you. You were my home. They were my responsibility. The USB has everything. Account numbers, passwords, records of every transfer. There's enough left to see the kids through college if you choose to keep sending it, or not. That's your decision now. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know, I never meant to hurt you. You were the best part of my life. Henry. I stared at the page until the words swam. Then I plugged in the drive. It was organized. Folders labeled by year. Spreadsheets tracking every dollar. Medical bills for Sophia's asthma. Tuition payments. Even a savings account in the children's names, small but growing. He'd been meticulous. The same Henry who balanced our checkbook to the penny had balanced 2 families with the same careful hand. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the living room floor with the laptop, reading through years of quiet devotion disguised as deception. By dawn, I knew what I was going to do. I wasn't going to expose him. I wasn't going to drag Maria or the children through scandal or shame. They hadn't asked for any of this. Neither had I, but I couldn't pretend it never happened. 3 weeks later, I drove back to Charleston. This time, I didn't park across the street. I pulled into the driveway behind a faded blue minivan, heart hammering so loud I thought the neighbors could hear it. The porch light was on, even though it was still daylight, maybe a habit from when the kids were smaller. I sat in the car for 10 full minutes, rehearsing words that wouldn't come. Finally, I got out, smoothed my blouse, and walked up the cracked concrete path. The door opened before I could knock. Maria stood there, in the same green t-shirt from before, hair pulled back in a messy knot, dish towel still over her shoulder. She looked at me, really looked, and something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, not surprise, just quiet knowing. "You're Evelyn," she said softly. Her voice was low, careful, like she'd practiced this moment too. I nodded. My mouth was dry. I'm Evelyn. She stepped aside. Come in. The house smelled of garlic and fresh laundry. Toys were stacked neatly in a corner. A half-finished puzzle covered the coffee table. Family photos lined the hallway, Sophia and Matteo at different ages, Maria smiling beside them, and in several, Henry, younger Henry, smiling Henry, holding them. She led me to the kitchen. A kettle whistled. She turned it off, poured 2 mugs of tea without asking if I wanted any, and set them on the table. We sat across from each other. The silence stretched, heavy but not hostile. I knew you'd come eventually, she said. He always said you were smart, that you'd figure it out. How long have you known about me? My voice cracked on the last word. From the beginning. She looked down at her hands. He told me he was married, that he loved you, that he couldn't leave you. I was young, angry, but I loved him too. So I took what he could give. I swallowed hard. The children, do they know? They know their father is married to someone else. They know he has another family. They've never met you, but they've seen pictures. Henry showed them. He told them you were kind, that you raised good kids of your own. My chest ached. Why didn't he tell me? Maria's eyes met mine, steady, tired, because he was afraid you'd leave, and he couldn't bear losing either of us. We sat with that for a long time. The tea cooled between us. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked once, sharp and distant. Finally, she spoke again. He left instructions. If anything happened to him, I was supposed to reach out to you. I didn't. I thought it would be too much. But you came anyway. I had to see, I whispered. I had to understand. She nodded slowly. Then, in a voice so quiet I almost missed it, would you like to meet them? I hadn't expected the question to come so gently, so soon. Would I like to meet them? My mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. The steam from the tea curled between us like a fragile bridge. Maria waited, patient, the way someone waits who's already lost too much to rush anything. Yes, I said finally, the word barely above a whisper. If they want to. She gave a small nod, almost imperceptible, then stood. They'll be home from soccer practice in about 20 minutes. Sophia's driving now. She just got her license last month. Matteo's still complaining about it. A faint smile touched her lips, the kind that carries both pride and exhaustion. I'll tell them you're here. No secrets. They've known this day might come. She disappeared down the short hallway. I heard her voice, muffled, speaking to someone on the phone. I stayed at the table, fingers wrapped around the cooling mug, listening to the house breathe around me, the soft tick of a wall clock shaped like a sunflower, the hum of the refrigerator, distant traffic beyond the open window. Everything ordinary, everything real. When the front door opened again, the sound hit me first, shoes scuffing on the mat, keys jangling, the quick chatter of teenagers unwinding after practice. Mom, where's Sophia? Stopped in the doorway to the kitchen. She was taller than I'd imagined, nearly my height, dark hair pulled into a loose braid, cheeks flushed from running drills. Matteo stood behind her, still in cleats, grass stains on his shins, holding a water bottle half drunk. They both froze when they saw me. Maria stepped between us, calm as still water. Kids, this is Evelyn, your dad's wife. The silence that followed was thick enough to taste. Sophia's eyes, Henry's eyes widened, then softened. She looked at me the way you look at a photograph that's suddenly stepped out of its frame. Matteo shifted his weight, glancing at his mother for direction. Hi, Sophia said at last. Her voice cracked just a little on the word. Hi, I managed back. Matteo gave a small, awkward wave. Hey, Maria gestured to the chairs. Sit. You two need water. Or food. There's leftover lasagna in the fridge. They moved slowly, like they were walking through deep water. Sophia sat across from me. Matteo took the chair beside her. Up close I could see the resemblance even more clearly. The slight curve of the jaw, the way their brows furrowed when they were thinking. My heart twisted so hard I almost gasped. Maria didn't sit. She busied herself at the counter, pulling out plates, reheating slices of lasagna in the microwave. The smell of tomato sauce and melted cheese filled the room, warm and familiar, the same recipe I'd made for decades. She set plates in front of the kids, then one in front of me without asking. Eat if you want, she said quietly. No pressure. I picked up the fork but couldn't bring myself to take a bite. Sophia spoke first. Dad talked about you a lot. I looked up. He did. Yeah. She poked at her food. He said you were the smartest person he knew, that you could look at a kid's face and know exactly what they needed. He said you taught him how to be patient. My throat closed. I blinked hard. Matteo spoke next, quieter. He showed us pictures of your house. The treehouse he built. He said you used to read to him at night when he couldn't sleep after trips. I hadn't known Henry struggled with sleep after those trips. I hadn't known he needed stories to settle. He always brought us stuff from Atlanta, Sophia continued. Little things, a keychain from the aquarium once, a postcard of the skyline. He said they were from business trips, but we knew, they knew. The microwave beeped again. Maria, pulling out another slice for herself. She finally sat, though, at the far end of the table, giving us space. I'm sorry, I said. The words felt inadequate, but they were all I had. I didn't know, for a long time, and when I found out, I didn't know what to do with it. Sophia looked at me steadily. We didn't hate you. We just didn't understand why there had to be two families. Mateo nodded. Dad said it was complicated, that grown-ups make mistakes and then try to fix them the best they can. I let out a shaky breath. He made a lot of mistakes. Yeah, Sophia said softly, but he loved us, all of us. The room went quiet again. The clock ticked. Somewhere outside a lawnmower started, then stopped. Maria spoke then, her voice steady. Henry left instructions for after he was gone. Money for college, a trust fund he set up years ago. It's in both your names, kids, and there's a letter for each of you from him. I've kept them safe. Sophia's eyes filled. Mateo looked down at his plate. I don't want the money, I said suddenly. Not if it means taking from them. Maria shook her head. It's separate. He made sure. There's enough. He was careful about that, at least. I looked at the children, my husband's children. Not mine by blood, but something else. Something shared. I don't know what happens next, I admitted. I don't know if I'm supposed to disappear or stay. I just know I couldn't pretend you didn't exist. Sophia reached across the table, hesitant. Her fingers brushed mine. You don't have to disappear. Mateo looked up. Do you have grandkids? I smiled through tears. 2, a boy and a girl. They're younger than you. He gave a small grin. Cool, maybe they like soccer. The moment stretched fragile possible. Maria stood again. I think we've had enough for one day. You're welcome back, Evelyn, whenever you're ready. No rush, I nodded, throat too tight to speak. Sophia walked me to the door. She hugged me quick, fierce, unexpected. Thank you for coming, she whispered. I think Dad would be glad. I drove away with the taste of lasagna still on my tongue, the smell of their home in my hair, and a strange, aching fullness where emptiness had been. The drive back to Atlanta that night felt longer than the one down. The highway stretched dark and endless under a sky thick with stars, the kind Henry used to point out on our late-night drives home from family gatherings. I kept the radio off. I wanted silence, needed it, to let the day settle inside me like sediment in a river. My hands stayed steady on the wheel, but my mind kept replaying fragments. Sophia's quick, fierce hug. The way Mateo's voice cracked when he said cool about my grandkids. Maria's quiet, you're welcome back, as she closed the door behind me. I didn't cry again until I pulled into my own driveway and saw the porch light still on. The one Henry always left burning when he knew I'd be coming home late from book club or parent-teacher conferences. I sat in the car with the engine off, listening to the ticks and pops as it cooled, and the tears came slow this time less storm, more steady rain. Not grief, exactly. Something gentler. Something like mourning the life I thought I had, while beginning to feel the shape of the one I might still have. The next morning, I called Emily. She answered on the second ring, voice bright with worry. Mom, finally. I was about to drive over. You've been ghosting us. I know, I'm sorry. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee steaming in front of me, the same mug Henry used every morning. I need to tell you something, both of you. Can you and Jack come over tonight? Bring Tom and Sarah if they're free. The grandkids too. I want everyone here. There was a pause. Mom, are you okay? I will be, I said. I just need to talk, face to face. She didn't push. We'll be there. 7. The house filled up that evening the way it used to on holidays. Emily and Tom arrived first, arms full of grocery bags, salad, bread, a bottle of red wine. Jack and Sarah came next, the kids tumbling in behind them, already racing to the backyard swing set Henry built years ago. The air smelled of garlic bread warming in the oven and the faint citrus of Emily's perfume. Laughter bounced off the walls, but underneath it was a current of concern. They knew something was coming. We ate in the dining room, plates passed, small talk about school projects and soccer games. I waited until coffee was poured and the kids had wandered off to play board games in the living room. Then I took a breath that felt like it came from the bottom of my lungs. I found something after your father died. I began. In his desk. Letters, photographs, bank records. Emily's fork stilled. Jack leaned forward slightly, elbows on the table. I told them everything calmly without hurry. The second family in Charleston. Maria, Sophia, and Mateo. The years of quiet support. The USB drive. The letter addressed to me. The visit. The lasagna. The hug on the porch. When I finished, the room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Emily spoke first, voice small. Dad had other kids. I nodded. 2 teenagers now. They're good kids, smart, kind. They knew about us. They've seen pictures of you two, of this house, of the treehouse. Jack rubbed his face with both hands. How long? Since before you were born, Jack. Sophia came first. Then Mateo, a few years later. Tom reached for Emily's hand under the table. Sarah looked at Jack, eyes wide but steady. Emily's voice trembled. And you met them. I did, yesterday. Jack exhaled slowly. What did they say? They said Dad talked about us, that he loved us, that he was sorry he couldn't give them more of himself. A long silence followed. Then, Emily stood, walked around the table, and wrapped her arms around me from behind, her cheek pressed against mine. I'm so sorry, Mom. I covered her hands with mine. I'm not asking you to forgive him, or to meet them, or to do anything. I just needed you to know, because keeping it from you felt like another secret. And I'm done with secrets. Jack cleared his throat. Do they need anything? Money, college. There's a trust. Henry set it up years ago. It's theirs, but they're not asking for more. Maria said the same thing. You did. She doesn't want to take anything from us. Sarah spoke quietly. What are you going to do now? I looked around the table at the faces I'd watched grow up, the same faces that had once fit perfectly in the crook of Henry's arm. I don't know exactly, but I think I want to keep the door open, not force anything. Just let them know they're not alone in the world, and let them decide what that means. Emily wiped her eyes. You're stronger than anyone I know. I don't feel strong, I said. I feel tired, and sad, and strangely grateful. Because I got to see another piece of the man I loved. Even the broken pieces. Jack reached across and squeezed my hand. We'll follow your lead, Mom. Whatever you need. The grandkids wandered back in then, oblivious, asking for dessert. We switched to lighter things: ice cream, stories about school, the way the youngest one could now ride a bike without training wheels. Life kept moving, even when the heart felt cracked open. Later, after everyone left and the house was quiet again, I sat on the porch swing with a cup of chamomile. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of cut grass from the neighbor's yard. I thought about Henry, not the man who hid things, but the man who tried to hold everything together, who loved enough to break his own heart, keeping 2 worlds from colliding. I didn't forgive him that night. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a slow thawing. But I felt something loosen inside me. A knot I'd carried for months, finally beginning to ease. A few weeks later I drove back to Charleston. This time, I brought a photo album, pictures of Emily and Jack as children, of our Christmases, of the grandkids on the same swing set. Sophia and Mateo flipped through the pages on the living room couch, pointing, laughing softly at the old hairstyles, the dated clothes. Maria sat beside me on the love seat, close enough that our shoulders touched. When the kids went to bed, Maria turned to me. Thank you for this, for not shutting the door. I thought about it, I admitted, but shutting it would have hurt more people, including me. She nodded. Henry always said you had the biggest heart he'd ever known. I smiled, small and real. He had a big one too, just crowded. We sat in companionable quiet for a while, 2 women who'd loved the same man in different rooms of his life. Months passed, not in a rush, but in the slow, careful way seasons change when you're paying attention. I didn't try to force a new family into shape. I didn't demand holidays together, or pretend the past could be rewritten. What grew instead was something quieter, something that felt more honest. I started driving to Charleston every 6 or 7 weeks. Never announced far in advance. Just a text to Maria the day before. I'll be passing through tomorrow. Coffee. And she would reply simply, doors open. Sometimes the kids were at school or practice and it was just the 2 of us. We'd sit on her small back porch with mismatched mugs, watching hummingbirds fight over the red feeder she kept filled. We talked about ordinary things first. Weather, grocery prices, the new stoplight they put in on Meeting Street. Then, slowly, the harder things. how Sofia was applying to colleges and terrified of leaving home, how Matteo had started playing the trumpet and practiced so loudly the neighbors complained, how Maria sometimes woke up at 3 in the morning, wondering if she'd made the right choices 20 years ago. I told her about Emily's promotion at the hospital, about Jack building a new deck behind their house, about how my granddaughter had finally lost her 2 front teeth and insisted on showing me the gap over video call. Maria listened the way good listeners do, without interrupting, without comparing. She never asked me to choose sides. She never spoke ill of Henry, even when the hurt was still raw between us. One Saturday in early fall, I arrived just as Sofia was practicing parallel parking in the driveway for her road test. Matteo stood on the grass giving exaggerated directions, arms waving like an air traffic controller. When they saw my car, Sofia killed the engine, and both of them came over. "Want to watch me fail spectacularly?" Sofia asked, half smiling. "I'd love to," I said. I stood beside Matteo on the lawn while she tried again. She scraped the curb once, cursed under her breath, then straightened the wheel and slid in perfectly on the second try. Matteo whooped and high-fived her. I clapped quietly, but with real pride. Afterward, we all went inside for lunch. Maria had made chicken salad with grapes the way Henry used to like it. We ate on paper plates at the kitchen table because the dishwasher was full. It felt easy, not forced, not pretend. Later, when the kids had gone upstairs to finish homework, Maria looked at me across the table and said, "I think Sofia wants to meet your daughter." My heart gave a quick, surprised thud. She said that, not in so many words, but she keeps asking questions about Emily, about what she was like growing up, about whether she looks like Dad. I nodded slowly. "I'll talk to Emily, see how she feels." Maria reached over and touched my wrist, just a light brush of fingers, no pressure. "Whenever she's ready, or never, that's okay too." 2 weeks later, Emily surprised me. She called on a Tuesday evening while I was folding laundry. "Mom, I've been thinking about Sofia and Matteo. I'd like to meet them. Just me first. No big family gathering. Just coffee or something. Is that weird?" I sat down on the edge of the bed, a warm towel still in my lap. "It's not weird. It's brave." We arranged it for the following Saturday. Neutral ground, a little cafe near the Battery in Charleston, with outdoor tables overlooking the water. I drove Emily down that morning. She was quieter than usual, fingers twisting the strap of her purse. When we arrived, Sofia was already there, sitting alone at a rotary table, sunglasses pushed up on her head, looking younger than her 18 years. I hung back near the parking lot, giving them space. They greeted each other awkwardly, at first small waves, nervous smiles. Then Sofia said something I couldn't hear, and Emily laughed, a real laugh, the kind that starts in her belly. They ordered iced coffees and sat. I watched from a distance as the stiffness melted away. Sofia showed Emily something on her phone, probably college applications or soccer highlights. Emily pulled out her own phone, showing pictures of her kids. At one point, Sofia reached over and touched Emily's wrist the same way Maria had touched mine weeks before. A small, instinctive gesture of connection. When they finally stood to leave, they hugged, brief but real. Emily walked back toward me with shining eyes. "She's nice," she said simply. "Really nice." A few months after that, Matteo asked if he could come see the treehouse Henry built. I said yes, of course. He arrived on a crisp November afternoon with Maria and Sofia. Jack and his family were there too. The kids, my grandkids and Henry's children, met on the back lawn like strangers who already knew each other's stories. Within 20 minutes they were all climbing the treehouse ladder, laughing about how small the doorway seemed now. I stood on the deck with Maria, watching them. The sun was low, turning everything golden. The air smelled of pine and fallen leaves. Maria spoke without looking at me. "I used to be so angry at him, for years, for making us the secret, for making you the secret. But seeing this," she gestured toward the yard full of children, "I think maybe he gave us all something after all." I swallowed hard. He left a lot of mess, but he also left them, and they're beautiful. She nodded. "They are." We didn't say much more. We didn't need to. The first real gathering happened the following spring, almost a year to the day after I first stood on Maria's porch with my heart in my throat. It wasn't planned as a grand reconciliation. No banners, no speeches, no forced smiles for photos. It was simpler than that. Easter weekend. Emily suggested it, first half joking, half serious over coffee one morning. "What if we all did something low-key? A picnic at the lake. The one Dad used to take us to." I turned the idea over 4 days before texting Maria, Her reply came within minutes. We'd like that. The kids have been asking when they'd see the treehouse again. We chose a Saturday in April when the dogwoods were blooming pink and white along the highway. I packed the old picnic basket. Henry always used the wicker one with the red checkered lining filled with deviled eggs, potato salad, fried chicken, and the peach cobbler. I still made the way he liked it, extra cinnamon on top. Emily and Jack brought blankets, folding chairs, a cooler of drinks. The grandkids ran ahead with soccer balls and frisbees. Already buzzing with the promise of a long afternoon outside, Maria's minivan pulled into the gravel lot just after noon. Sophia stepped out first, wearing a sundress the color of new leaves, Matteo behind her in a faded band t-shirt and shorts. Maria followed, carrying a foil-covered tray of brownies she'd baked the night before. We met halfway across the grass, awkward, for only a second before the children bridged the gap. My granddaughter tugged at Sophia's hand. "You're really tall. Can you help me throw the frisbee super far?" Sophia laughed and let herself be led away. Matteo spotted the treehouse Jack had rebuilt last summer and asked if he could climb it. Soon the yard was full of running feet, shouts, the thwack of a ball against a trunk. The adults spread blankets under the big live oak near the water. I sat between Emily and Maria, the three of us watching the scene unfold like something out of a dream I hadn't known I could have. Jack opened the cooler, passed around lemonade. Tom asked Maria about her job. She worked as a part-time librarian at the local middle school. No end. They fell into easy conversation about favorite books and stubborn middle schoolers. Sarah took pictures quietly, not staging anything, just catching the light on laughing faces. At one point, Sophia came back to the blanket, breathless, hair coming loose from its braid. She dropped down beside me. "Your grandkids are hilarious. The little one keeps calling me Big Sister Sophia. Is that okay?" I felt warmth spread through my chest. More than okay. She leaned her head on my shoulder for just a moment, brief but deliberate. Then she was up again, running back to the game. Later, when the sun dipped lower and the kids were sprawled on blankets eating brownies, Maria turned to me. Her voice was quiet, meant only for me. "I never thought this would happen. Not like this." "Me neither," I admitted. "I thought the most I could hope for was civility. Or maybe just tolerance." She looked out at the water, where Matteo was skipping stones with Jack. Henry used to say the hardest part wasn't keeping the secret. It was knowing one day it would come out, and he wouldn't be here to help clean up the mess. I nodded slowly. He left us the mess, but he also left us each other. She gave a small, surprised laugh. "Yeah, funny how that works." We sat in silence after that, the kind that doesn't need filling. The air smelled of lake water and charcoal from someone's grill farther down the shore. Fireflies began to blink in the gathering dusk. The children's voices carried across the grass high, happy, unburdened. When it was time to pack up, no one rushed. Blankets were folded slowly, coolers latched. Goodbyes were soft, with promises of next time that actually felt possible. Sophia hugged me last longer this time. "Thank you for today," she whispered. "I've wanted this for a long time." I held her shoulders gently. "Me too, sweetheart." Driving home that night, Emily beside me in the passenger seat. She reached over and squeezed my hand. "You did good, Mom." "I didn't do anything," I said. "I just didn't close the door." "That's everything," she replied. The road stretched ahead, dark except for the sweep of headlights. I thought of Henry Knotts with anger now, but with something softer, a kind of tired understanding. He'd broken things, but he'd also planted seeds he never got to see grow. And somehow, against all odds, they had. And so here we are, at the end of the story, not the end of the pain. Not the end of the questions, but the end of the hiding. I still miss Henry some nights. The way the bed feels too wide. The way the house stays quiet when it used to hold his footsteps. I still get angry sometimes, when I remember the years I spent loving a man who carried a whole other life in his pocket, like loose change. But mostly what I feel now is something quieter. Something like peace that had to be earned the hard way. Sophia and Matteo come to Atlanta a few times a year now. Sometimes just for a weekend. Sometimes longer. They've met my grandkids, properly played in the backyard, eaten too much peach cobbler, argued over board games until someone flips the table in mock outrage. Emily calls Sophia her bonus sister. Jack teaches Matteo how to fix a leaky faucet. Maria and I text most weeks, nothing dramatic, just checking in. A photo of a hummingbird at her feeder. A picture of my granddaughter's latest art project. Small threads that keep weaving us together. I don't have a neat bow to tie on this. Life rarely does. There are still days I wonder what I could have done differently, if knowing earlier would have changed anything. But then I look at the faces around my table, some carrying Henry's hazel eyes, some carrying mine, and I realized the real miracle wasn't that he kept the secret so long. It's that, in the end, love refused to stay buried. If you've ever discovered a truth that shattered the life you thought you had, if you've ever had to decide whether to burn the bridge or start walking across the pieces, tell me, would you have done what I did? Would you have opened that second door, even knowing it might hurt all over again? Or would you have closed it and tried to forget? I'd love to hear your heart in the comments below. No judgment here, just listening. And if this story touched something in you, maybe a wound, maybe a hope, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to know they're not alone. And consider subscribing so we can keep telling these real, messy, human stories together. Until next time, take care of your heart. It's carried you this far. God bless. Would you like me to make any revisions to the full story, or start a new one on a different topic?